How many of you can remember back 20 years? I see enough people old enough. I certainly am. 1992, the Academy Awards. Jack Palance was nominated and won for Best Actor in City Slickers. Do you remember the scene? He bolts up to the stage and immediately drops to the floor and does a number of one-arm push-ups. He was 73 at the time. He wanted to prove to his colleagues that he wasn't dead yet, that he was in great shape. Well, Palance, of course, played in that movie opposite Billy Crystal. And he had one of the great lines in theater history, I think. If you remember the film, three longtime friends are facing middle age. And in their middle age crises, they find themselves losing focus. They were in danger of losing their marriages and their families. So to reignite the fire in their lives, they sign up as cowboys. And they're helping at a dude ranch to move the cattle from high in the hills down to the lower valley. And Jack Palance plays Curly. And Curly is the grizzled old cowboy who leads them. And he's the toughest, but the happiest and the wisest man they ever met. Billy Crystal, as Mitch, asks the usually tight-lipped cowpoke, "Curly, what's your secret? Curly, what makes your life so strong and so centered and so sure?" And Curly's response? Well, he smiles and he raises his grubby, gloved, fingered index finger. That's all he does. He raises that finger. And Billy Crystal looks at him and says, "Your finger?" And then Curly says, "One thing. Just one thing." And the rest doesn't mean, well, I won't continue the quote. And then Mitch asks him, "But what is the one thing?" And Curly responds, "That's what you're going to have to find out." And then Curly rides away. Well, Billy Crystal's character spends the rest of the movie frantically trying to figure out what Curly meant. What is that one thing? Well, the story of Mary and Martha is a story about losing focus and struggling to find just that one thing. Those words of Jesus are famous. "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has found the one thing." Sometimes, what seems so important and so urgent needs to be set aside for a moment. It's the classic example of the urgent taking place of the important. A trap that we can all find ourselves falling into on a daily basis. It's very easy for any of us to lose focus. How easy it is for married couples to get caught up in all the trivialities of life and miss out on those opportune moments to truly be present to one another. How easy it is for families to get so concerned about unimportant matters that they are angry with each other for years over issues that are long forgotten. How easy it is for bosses to get so caught up in profit that they lose perspective on the value of the people who work for them. How easy it is for the church to get so caught up in rules and regulations that the everyday lives of struggling people get lost in the mix. How easy it is for nations to get caught up in minor scuffles that the larger picture of peace and justice is just totally missed. It's a very important question for all of us to ponder this weekend. Have we lost our focus? What's happening in our lives right now at this time in history that we've lost our focus? Do we let what we believe is urgent take the place of what's really important? Are we so involved in so many things that we have no focus, and the marriage is suffering, or the family is suffering, or my relationship to God is suffering? Am I so caught up in superficial things that I've lost a sense of who I am and what gives meaning to my life, and I don't even know what I'm living for anymore? When our lives are so consumed by that which is truly temporary, we live in fear of losing it in this life, and we definitely lose it in death. Living for money and material possessions, they become somebody else's when we die. Living for fame and power, we'll be quickly forgotten when we die. Living for fun and pleasure, again, it's all over at death. Let me tell you a true story. Michael Zanger is a guide, a mountain guide, and he tells of leading a group of men up Mount Shasta a few years ago. And one of the men in his group was having a very difficult time breathing as they were climbing the mountain. His face coloring was unusual. They had to make frequent stops, but the frequent stops didn't seem to help in his breathing. As they continued to climb, his breathing was punctuated by coughing and the spitting up of blood. And then, to make matters worse, a sudden snowstorm appears and they have to hide themselves in tents. Well, Michael, the guide, had a cell phone and said, I really think we should call for some help. And the fellow that was having trouble showed some interest, but said to Michael, he said, would you first of all make a personal call for me? And the guide, Michael, thought to himself, well, this man thinks he's critical. He wants to speak to his loved ones one last time. So, of course, he agreed to make this phone call. And so the man said to him, would you call my broker in San Francisco and ask what the value of my stock is? It is a true story. And Michael says that the absurdity of what was important to this gentleman became a very frequent joke as he continued to take other groups up the mountain. So what's the one thing? What is really important to us? Is it the marriage? Is it your family? Relationships? A vocation? A spirituality? A closeness to God? What's the priority of our lives today? In the movie City Slickers, Billy Crystal as Mitch spent the whole time at the Dude Ranch struggling with Curly's challenge. That's what you have to find out, he said to him. And he did find it out in the end. He was able to move through his midlife crisis when he discovered what was truly important to him, and it was his wife and his family. So the question today for each of us is, what about us? Have we found the one thing? Have we found the secret? Or is Jesus saying to each one of us today, you are anxious and worried about many things. There's only one thing that's important. Mary found it. How about us?